Juan Zarate is our senior national security analyst. He's in Washington with analysis of the attacks. Juan, we know ISIS has claimed responsibility for these attacks. Do these attacks, however, actually bear the hallmarks of what we've seen previously from ISIS?
Well, this is what we have feared from ISIS, Elaine. Counterterrorism officials, especially in Europe, have been worried that there would be a coordinated attack, perhaps directed from ISIS, using foreign fighters that have been trained, have fought in places like Syria and Iraq, but have returned to Paris to attack in a coordinated way. You saw a glimmer of this in the Charlie Hebdo and kosher market attack earlier in the year, January of this year in Paris. But this is a more significant coordinated attack, and the type that European officials have long worried about, and in fact had disrupted some attacks that were planned like this, as we saw in Belgium and France in January of 2005 after the Charlie Hebdo attacks. And so this is the fruition of an ISIS methodology that authorities have been worried about. We've now seen it come to pass.
And what do you make of the targets chosen, Juan? You know, cafes, a concert hall, France's national stadium. What does that tell us about ISIS's methodology, what it is that they are thinking in terms of their strategy?
Well, these are signature soft targets. These aren't the iconic places like the Eiffel Tower or a government ministry, but these are significant both culturally and socially. And so these terrorists are obviously trying to find targets of opportunity where they can cause as much damage as possible, but they're also trying to affect a way of life. And they certainly hit at the heart of Paris on a beautiful fall evening, at signature Parisian sites, at a sports stadium, at a restaurant, at a theater, a concert. And so these are signature Western targets that they're attacking. I think they also try to not just attack soft targets, easier to hit targets, but also are trying to have strategic impact, to terrorize the population, and even to create further debates and division within Paris, within France, within Europe.
I want to take a step back for a moment, Juan, and ask you, you know, ISIS has also claimed responsibility for the downing of that Russian jetliner over Egypt. What does that tell us about the reach and the capability of that organization?
Well, Elaine, I think we have to realize now that the threat from ISIS is no longer contained to the problems of Syria and Iraq. This is now a regional and a global problem. And the war on terror that we once thought was a war being fought against al-Qaeda now has to refocus on the Islamic State, because they've demonstrated an ability, frankly, and a willingness to attack alternate targets, to use their platforms abroad, to use operatives in very creative and destructive ways. So,
Juan, as you know, one of the attackers was found with a Syrian passport, and I wonder what you think that means regarding the implications there with the refugee crisis that we have seen, you know, the flood of migrants. And what does that mean in terms of the actual conflict in Syria? Because we have heard, for instance, Russian President Vladimir Putin talk about having to align with Bashar al-Assad, the president of Syria, in order to defeat ISIS. So what does that mean, the fact that there was this passport, a Syrian passport, found on one of these attackers?
Great question, Elaine. I think there are three strategic implications. One is operational. This demonstrates that ISIS is able to infiltrate from the outside, perhaps even coordinate and direct from the outside, and get men, materiel, and an organized attack into a major Western capital. That's significant, that's strategic, that's different. Then it implicates this question of Syrian refugees. It's going to exacerbate this ongoing debate in Europe, not to mention in North America, about how to deal with Syrian refugees, how many to allow in, under what conditions, what security protocols, should we allow any of them in now? And so the fact that they probably use Syrian operatives with Syrian passports is going to raise the specter of operatives filtering in among the refugee population, which is going to make that debate all the more contentious and difficult. Finally, as you said, it will muddy the picture in Syria, because you've already heard from President Assad in Damascus, you've heard from Moscow, you have also heard from Tehran, an alignment of narratives that they are fighting against these very same terrorists, and the world needs to rally around stability and the Assad regime to fight them in Syria. That's certainly the wrong narrative from an American perspective, and doesn't reflect the reality that Assad has exacerbated this problem and frankly is a motivator for the Islamic State and the attractiveness of foreign fighters into that conflict. And so all three of those things are implications of finding a Syrian passport on the body of one of the perpetrators.
Juan, just one more question, because I think as Americans continue to learn about what has happened overseas, obviously their hearts, their thoughts, their prayers are with the people of Paris, the French people, but some are also asking, what is the likelihood that ISIS could reach here in the United States?
There are a couple of disturbing dimensions to this. One, we do know that the FBI has been making arrests, NYPD, the JTTFs have been making arrests of individuals who've been supporting ISIS and have been plotting attacks in the United States. And so that's disturbing because individuals are radicalized, maybe flowing into the fight and coming back to attack. We have to be vigilant. The second problem is that the methodology of this attack is worrisome to security officials. France is an incredibly professional intelligence service. I worked with them closely when I was at the White House. They are very good at counterterrorism, perhaps some of the best in the world. The fact that these individuals were able to perpetrate an attack under the radar, organize it so sophisticatedly in Paris, and to execute it with such devastating impact is really worrisome because it does suggest some gaps in our intelligence that may not just affect France, but may affect the United States.
All right, Juan Zarate from Washington for us. Juan, we thank you for your analysis.
Thank you, Elaine.